When it comes down to it, you can always count on your family to stab you in the back, or in some cases, to even kill.
You are now listening to The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay on Spotify. A podcast aimed to uncover and share the stories behind heinous and insane acts that have been overlooked or overshadowed by mainstream media, getting justice for the voices that can't speak.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl Kay, and I am the host of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. A podcast designed to focus on crimes committed in the Black community that you don't hear about in mainstream media, giving a voice to those victims that have otherwise been silenced. Hey, everybody. So, first and foremost, my apologies on the delay in the episode. Like I told y'all last week, I am not really feeling this Riverside thing. So Spotify has the Riverside, like I guess, resource now that you have to use to stream your podcast episodes or to record. And it is a little frustrating to say the least. I'm not feeling it at all. So now I'm kind of, looking at various resources to see how I can stream it because before, I used to be able to record and have everything saved and then that way I could just go in and like add to it. But with this Riverside stuff, it's just yeah. Anyway, so just know that I am looking for, other avenues to use that will still allow me to be able to, distribute it through various streaming services like Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so forth and so on. So just know that's in the works, okay? Tonight I am sipping on some red turtle vodka, which is like this really good vodka that I got while I was in the Bahamas. Like it is so good. It's real smooth and like I can pretty much drink it straight up or, mix it up with a little something, something. But tonight, for the purpose of this episode, so that I don't get too wasted and y'all know I get a little unfiltered. So I'm gonna mix it up with a little bit of juice. Now, some of y'all have been sending me like what you guys drink when you're listening to the episodes. So, one of the listeners, the original Miss MA, she told me that she was drinking vodka and apple juice. And I'm kind of curious as to how that tastes. So, I might have to try that one. I have done happy juice before, which is Henny and apple juice. Shout out to Carrie Hilson, by the way, because yeah, that song that she did made me very curious. And I tried it and love it. But I might have to try that. And then another listener by the name of Ms. Busybody, she said that she was drinking coconut Ciroc with amaretto and pineapple juice. Baby, that one got my attention. So I definitely have to try that for the next episode. But I definitely need something for this because whew, y'all, it's a lot to take in with this episode. Um, I do have to advise that this episode of The Infamous Ones is a bit graphic because it involves the death of minors. So, listener discretion is advised. As always, when it comes to, the death of minors, I'll try to give you like a warning so that you can skip ahead if you need to, because like I said, it's a bit graphic. So, I hope you guys got your popcorn and your drink of choice ready, and y'all already know what time it is. Let's get it. This week's case involves a gruesome and heinous murder that occurred in the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2008 at 722 Lester Street in Memphis, Tennessee. The case involves Hallie Ralph Cox, victim, Cecil Dotson Sr., victim, Marissa Renee Williams, victim, Hollis Pete Seals, victim, Sindri Robertson, victim, Samario Dewan Dotson, victim, Cecil Dwayne Dotson II, victim, Sanaya Dotson, surviving victim, Cedric Dotson, surviving victim, Cecil Dotson Jr., aka CJ, surviving victim, and the infamous murderer, Jessie Dotson Jr., who would later be named the Leicester Street Murderer. Jesse Dotson Jr. was born on December 19th, 1974, in the state of Florida to Priscilla Shaw and Jesse Dotson Sr. He was the middle of three children who had an older sister, Nicole, and a younger brother, Cecil. He also had a half brother by the name of William Waddell from his father's side that you'll kind of hear me speak on more later. Jesse Jr. was from a very dysfunctional family, to say the least. Like, his father, Jesse Sr., was only 19 when he married his mother, Priscilla. And Priscilla, by the way, was only 15 years old when she got married. I don't know what kind of BS. Who the hell would allow their 15-year-old to get married to a 19-year-old? But okay. So Jesse Sr. and Priscilla were living in Florida, where Jesse was stationed in the army. Once he was discharged from the service, Jesse Sr. kind of struggled to find a job and, to pay the bills. And, a lot of times people will serve their country and just do so great and get all the recognition. But the minute that they're discharged, the minute that they're done, it's like they are tossed to the wayside. And that's what happened with Jesse Sr. He suffered from PTSD real bad, and he would actually take it out on his wife Priscilla. And, the bad thing is the kids saw all of this. So once they saw that they weren't really making it in Florida, they decided to move to the south side of Memphis, Tennessee, really hoping for an improvement. But yeah, that didn't really happen. Like, it actually got worse. Their dad was real abusive to Priscilla, so much so that eventually she just got fed up. And when Junior was about 6 years old, she took her kids and she left. Like, she was like, I'm not dealing with this shit no more. She bounced. So it's not to say that, Jesse Sr. wasn't still a part of their lives. Like, he was very much an involved parent, but he just wasn't with Priscilla anymore. And Junior still struggled. Like, he was getting into real trouble. Not to mention, he had gone to 10 different schools. How the hell? 10 different schools? Shit. He actually had to repeat the 4th grade twice because he missed school so much. Like, now it was said that Jesse Jr. had some type of neurocognitive deficit, but they didn't really get into it, like into detail as to what it was specifically. And I was checking every court document that I could find, every record, but there was just nothing. But I'm assuming that it had something to do with the fact that, they moved around so much because he wasn't in school. So I don't know if if they said that because of the trial or what, but yeah. One thing that was apparent was that Jesse Jr. had a lot of anger issues. Like, homie was a ticking time bomb, okay? And it was especially geared toward his younger brother, Cecil. Now, initially, Cecil idolized his big brother, Junior. He wanted to do everything that his brother did. He would follow him around and, all of that. And that's how a lot of siblings are. One idolizes the other. But that idolization, like, stopped and the sibling rivalry began. Jesse Jr. was always getting into trouble between his brother and sister and, people in the neighborhood. Like, then on top of that, he's missing so much school and he just got tired of it. So he decided to drop out of school in the 8th grade and, was like, listen, this ain't for me. First of all, la boy, you living in my house. I have never in my life heard of a parent that is just willing to let their child drop out of school in the 8th grade. Like, unless you out there slanging on them corners. And even then, what parent is going to say, sure, you can drop out in the 8th grade to go sell dope, or sure, you can drop out in the late. Boy, if you don't get your ass up and go to school. But again, clearly dysfunctional family. But, like I said, he drops out of school in the 8th grade. And from there, trouble just kind of followed him. In 1990, when Jesse Jr. was about 15 years old, he was charged with disorderly conduct for making threats to his own mother when she tried to punish him. Now, you know what? I'm trying to figure out how the hell are you in a black household and getting away with this? Like, I'm your mama and you threaten me? Oh, you about to get so many fades, homie. You gonna be able to open a barber shop. Like, bruh, what? If I'm punishing my child and you threaten me to the point that I gotta call the cops, play take me to the king because nigga, you about to meet him quick, fast, and in a hurry. But it happened apparently. And not even a month later, he gets in trouble again because he attacks a 13-year-old boy. The cops show up to his house at 600 South Lauderdale and they're telling his mom, like, hey, we got to charge Jessie Dotson Jr. with assault. And she's asking why. And they're telling him because he punched a boy in the face and told him, if you don't bring me $25 tomorrow, I'm going to put you in the hospital. Like, and of course, the little boy is scared. So he goes and he tells his parents, and he's like, yo, this 15-year-old kid just punched me in the face. He's telling me I got to bring him money. Like, seriously? But his problems didn't stop there because a year later in 1991, he gets arrested. This time it's because he and Cecil were at home and all of a sudden they just get into this big argument and they started fighting like I mean like fighting scrapping like they mama Priscilla had to separate the two of them. She put Jesse Jr. in one room and Cecil in another, but Jesse Jr. turned into fucking Incredible Hulk and just like he literally bust down the door and he's like punching holes in the walls trying to get to his brother. He on some Hulk smash and he's punching all these holes and let me at him. And Priscilla, she is scared as hell. So she calls the cops again because she can't get him to calm down. Like she's begging and pleading with him, Junior, baby, calm down. It's okay. Relax. But he put his finger in his mama's face. Ooh, 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 I wish the fuck you would. He put his finger in his mama's face and tells her that he's gonna kill her. Boy, let one of my kids let okay. All right. Let one of my kids put their finger in my face. I'm gonna break it and dislocate it and everything else. I'm gonna have my foot so far up your ass, you gonna be picking shoelaces and using it as floss. Like, what? You literally, you get, man. Okay. All right. So cops get there and Jesse Jr. is still acting crazy. He is determined to get to his brother. He's like, yo, I want to fight this nigga. Nothing is calming him down. And so they end up taking him into custody. Now, later on that year, on December 13th, 1991, just 6 days before his 17th birthday, Junior's driving and he gets pulled over by the police. And when they get to the car, they're looking and they see that he has a 20 gauge sawed off shotgun on the floor along with a 38 caliber handgun. So the cops is confused. They're like, wait a minute, what the hell is a 16-year-old doing with these kind of weapons? And of course, they got to take him in. So they book him and they take him in. And that's another charge on his record. And of course, the trouble continues because in 1992, this time, Jesse Jr. is outside and he's just going off on a neighbor like, fuck you, bitch, cussing her out, all kind of stuff. They getting into it. Jesse Jr., he thinking he grown and he decide he gonna take a couple of beer bottles and hurl them at her. And luckily they missed her, but they like shattered inside of her apartment. So she called the cops on his ass. And they came out and they charged him with disorderly conduct. Like clearly Jesse Jr. is fucking up over and over and over. Like, but then shit really hits the fan right after he turned 19. In 1994, he got hemmed up on some major charges. January 8th, 1994, Jesse Jr. and his boy Anthony Cole were walking to his house off of Lauderdale Street when this guy named Hallie Cox approached them. Now, keep in mind, okay, this is the version that Jesse Jr. is telling, so the actual validity of this is kind of iffy. But Hallie Cox approaches them and asks them for some drugs. And Jesse Jr. says, we don't sell drugs. He claimed his homeboy Anthony was in the game like that. See, Anthony was known around the neighborhood as two time. So Anthony tells Junior, bruh, it's easy money. Let's get it. So he tells Hallie to follow him to this spot where he can get him what he's asking for. And so they go to the Cleburne Homes, which is the housing development where Jesse Jr. lives. And the building that they went to was like 3 buildings away from Jesse Jr.'s house. So Anthony tells Hallie, wait here outside. We'll be right back. And so he and Junior go inside, and Anthony hands Jesse Jr. a 30 caliber handgun, and he tells him, hey, hold on to this. We can go do this deal. And, if he turns out to be a cop, all you got to do is take the gun charge, and I'll take the charges for the drugs, but I can't take the charges for both. I don't want both charges. And so Anthony goes back outside to do the deal, and Junior's waiting in the house. And he's waiting and waiting. And he gets tired. He's like, man, fuck it. So he goes out to the courtyard and he can hear like a bunch of arguing. And he's like, yo, what's going on? So Jesse Jr. goes around the corner and he sees Hallie is yelling at Anthony. This is fake dope. This is fake dope. You sold me some bullshit, man. Which he wasn't lying because homie bought some soap shavings. Like that's foul. But when Hallie sees Junior coming toward them, he says something along the lines of, "You got something to do with this." And Junior's looking at him like, "Bro, what the fuck you talking about? I ain't the one that served you." And so Hallie's like, "Okay, I've got something for y'all." And he reaches into his pocket, and Jesse Jr., he got to think quick. So he pulls out his gun that Anthony gave him and he just bang shoots. Hallie gets shot in the head and his body drops to the ground and just homie died instantly. And Anthony sees this shit and bolted. Mr. Two Time was too fast because he left Junior's ass out there all by himself. Okay. So Junior decided, all right, I'm gonna rob this nigga. He took it upon himself to take $20 up off of the man before he ran off. But the shit caught up with him because 4 months later, May 5th, 1994, police end up finding out where Jesse Jr. is and they arrest him and they charge him with first degree murder. Now, he ended up taking a plea for a lesser charge and he got sentenced to 18 years in prison for second degree murder. He went to prison November 21st, 1994. He served damn near 14 years in prison. And during his entire time there, he only had one visit from his mother and like maybe a few phone calls. Now, Jesse Jr. wasn't the only one that was having troubles because his brother Cecil was definitely having some of his own. Cecil Dwayne Dotson was the youngest child born to Priscilla and Jesse Sr. on October 30th, 1977. Now, Cecil had some legal issues too, but his more so had to do with females. Okay. So, the very same year that Jesse Jr. had got arrested for murder, Cecil was dating this 16-year-old girl named LaWanda Abston. And LaWanda was pregnant with Cecil's baby. Now, LaWanda lived with her aunt Yolanda. Ooh, all these auntas. But LaWanda lived with her aunt Yolanda a few doors down from Cecil in the housing projects. And let me tell y'all, Yolanda did not like Cecil at all. She would tell LaWanda, you better stay the hell away from that boy. How you go and get pregnant for that nigga? I don't like him and I don't want you anywhere near him. But they're young, they're teenagers, they in love. So every night, even though her aunt told her not to, LaWanda would sneak out the house and she would go spend the night at Cecil's. And then finally, on March 2nd, 1995, LaWanda gave birth to their daughter, Sierra Dotson. Now, even though she had just given birth, Yolanda still did not like Cecil for her niece. She's like, "Tuh, they just gonna run out here and act like they grown. Oh, they gonna get they act together, especially because they parents. She can't be running around here doing whatever she wanna do." And she's telling LaWanda, "Little girl, just because you got a baby, you still gotta abide by the rules in my house. You can't be running to Cecil's in the dark just because you got a kid." And LaWanda, she's like, "But auntie, that's my man. That's my baby daddy. I love me some him." Tuh. Yolanda did not give a damn. If she saw her niece anywhere near Cecil, she would put her on punishment. If they were on the phone together and her aunt saw that they was on the phone, oh, she ain't having that. She would snatch the phone from LaWanda. She even ripped the phone cord out the wall one time. So when baby Sierra was like 5 months old, this was one particular day, August  24th, 1995, that Yolanda walked in and found LaWanda on the phone. So she goes over to her and she's like, "Who you on the phone with?" And automatically she knew the answer by the way LaWanda was acting. And so Yolanda tells her, hang up the damn phone. And of course, Lawanda did what she's told because, again, she's living in her auntie's house. She had to follow the rules. But then after she hangs up, the phone rings again. And this time Yolanda grabs the phone and she's like, why the hell you calling my phone? And Cecil's on the other end going the fuck off. Yo, who the fuck you think you talking to? You can't keep me from my baby mama. We got a baby together. I don't know what you think this is, but I'm the wrong one. And Yolanda said, "Oh, really? Little boy, you're not about to disrespect me." And so she hung up on him. But that wasn't gonna stop Cecil because a few minutes later, homie got bold. Baby, he came outside her apartment yelling and cussing and carrying on. But Yolanda ain't no punk. So she opens the door like, who the fuck you think you are charging me and my shit where I pay the bills? If I said you can't see my niece, then little nigga, you can't see my niece. But Cecil is not backing down at all. They out there cussing and yelling and all kind of craziness. And then the next thing you know, Yolanda's 17-year-old son, Antonio, he get caught up in the mix. So he comes to the front door and he tells his mama, man, watch out. He got a gun in his hand and he just starts firing off at Cecil. Just pop, pop, pop. So Cecil dipped up out of there and he runs. How you fire that many shots and you don't hit not one time? Now, of course, luckily, Cecil didn't get hurt, but he mad as hell now. You gonna shoot at me? Cause I'm trying to see my girl. I'm trying to see my baby mama. So Cecil's like, all right, I got you, player. So he go home and he get his gun. Now he's got a 7 millimeter pistol that's kind of like real unique because it could fire both 32 and 380 caliber bullets. So he loads it up with some 32s, which ironically was the same type of ammunition that Jesse Jr. had used when he killed Hallie. But yeah, so Cecil gets his gun and he goes to Yolanda's house not even 5 minutes after Antonio had shot at him. And so Yolanda and Antonio are still standing on the front of the stoop. Cecil wastes no time. He aims and fires off. Soon as he did that, Yolanda grabbed Antonio and they booked it inside. She pushes him through the door, but like Cecil is still shooting off these bullets and he wasn't hitting on shit neither. Like, that's sad. All these bullets is firing and neither one of y'all can hit for nothing. But Yolanda, she gets Antonio inside and then she gets inside and she like closes the door. But as she's closing the door, a bullet literally like comes through the door and it grazes one of her fingers and she starts bleeding and screaming and all of that. And so Antonio, he runs out the back door and Cecil sees him and is chasing him through the apartment complex, like through the projects and into another housing project until Antonio just completely loses him. Now, after this incident, of course, Yolanda called the cops because now she's bleeding. Like, damn the fact that her son shot at Cecil first and he was just returning the gesture. But Cecil ended up getting arrested and charged with attempted murder. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 4 years. And he only served two of them. But, once he got out, that was pretty much all he needed. He was like, yo, I need to get my life together. I got kids. And at this time, he did have more than one kid. So when he got out of prison, Cecil got his life back on track and he started to rebuild in Memphis. Now, Jesse Jr. is still in prison and he he wasn't necessarily like the model inmate because while he's in prison, he joins the kitchen crips. Uh, Pause. Kitchen crips? I really want to know how they came up with that. But because of the fact that he's now a Crip, his disciplinary record, excuse me, was insane. Like he had 29 violations in 13 years that he was in prison. He failed a drug test like 3 months after his last parole hearing. And the funny thing is, Jesse Jr. was actually eligible for parole after like 5.5 years of his sentence. But he kept having parole hearing after parole hearing, and they kept getting denied. It was like they knew that this dude was sick. They knew he was crazy. His last parole hearing was July 30th, 2007, and he had to go before the state board for probation and parole. This time, he was actually granted parole, even though he was advised that if he was ever caught with a weapon or drugs, or if there was ever any involvement in any type of criminal activity, his ass was going back to prison. Okay, but here's the backwards part though. Part of his condition for parole was that he had to stay out of trouble and, all of that. But on January 26, 2008, his parole and his sentence expired. So it was kind of like crazy that he had the stipulation that he had to abide by for 4 months maybe. So on August 27, 2007, Jesse Dotson Jr. is officially released from prison. When he was released from prison, he needed a place to stay. So he decided that he was going to go live with his sister, Nicole. He hit her up and he was like, listen, I need a place to crash. Can I come crash with you and the kids? And Nicole, she didn't really want him there because, again, they didn't really have the best relationship, but she's too afraid to tell him. So she kind of just, sucked it up because Junior, he hits her with the, I want to get a better relationship with my family. But in that same breath, he's constantly reminding her that nobody ever came to see him and how he resented them for it. And, he's just trying to get his life together, won't de won't, blah, blah, blah. He gets a job as a painter with his father. He ends up meeting a girl through Nicole named Sheila Jones, and that became his boo, his girl, all of that. He was living with Nicole and he wanted to rekindle his relationship with Cecil, who, of course, is, older now and got 6 kids between 3 women: Lawanda Abston, Erica Smith, and his current girlfriend, Marissa Renee Williams. So Cecil is living at 722 Leicester Street and he worked as a maintenance man. And he was living pretty much a basic life, even though he was a blood that belonged to the gangster disciples, he wasn't as active as he once was. He and his family moved into the house 6 months prior. The house was equipped with bars on all the windows, big iron door, and then the front door. And it was, of course, to keep everybody safe. He lived there with his girlfriend Marissa and his 6 kids. He had his oldest daughter with Lawanda. His older daughter was Sierra. He had a 9-year-old son, Cecil Jr., 5-year-old Cedric Dotson, 4-year-old Samario Dotson, 2-year-old Cecil Dotson II that he had with Erica Smith, and 2-month-old Sanaya Dotson. Okay, check this out. If you're confused, Marissa is the mother of Cecil Dotson Jr. She's also the mother of Cedric, Samario, and Sanaya. So she are 4 of his kids. Erica is the mother of Cecil II. Now, if you remember, I said that Cecil II is 2. Marissa got a bunch of babies by him. She got 4, the youngest being 2 months old. Okay? So let that marinate. So I'm guessing either him and Marissa broke up and he, slid up in something and got another baby, or maybe he was out there, doing his thing while he was with Marissa. Who knows? I definitely was trying to find out though. So Jesse Jr. gets out of prison and, he decides to go visit his brother and catch up for lost time. But of course, sibling rivalry, beef, whatever you want to call it, didn't take long to surface. January 29th, 2008, he goes to see his brother and things didn't go too smoothly. Cecil got a bunch of people over the house and they're all playing cards. And y'all know how black folk get when card games get involved. Let it be some spades and we drinking. It's only a matter of time before somebody get to fighting. So Junior's there and at first everything is cool. But that liquor done hit his system and he got some shit that he got to get off his chest. So everybody's drunk and his resentment for his brother starts to show. After they finish playing cards, Jesse Jr. gets up and he walks over to where he sees Cecil's leather jacket is, and he puts his leather jacket on. He don't say a word. He just starts walking towards the door. And Cecil's looking like, "Yo, what the fuck is this nigga doing?" And Jesse Jr., he still ain't saying nothing. So Cecil tries to, stop him because he sees that he's leaving with his jacket on. And he's like, "Bruh, that's my shit. Where you going in my jacket?" And Jesse Jr. just decided to pull his pistol out of his pants and he straight up challenged his brother. "Oh, you want your coat back? Well, come get it then, little nigga." And so Jesse Jr., he just leaves. And Cecil's pissed. Like he jumps in his car, he follows his brother all the way to Goodwill Village Apartments, but Jesse Jr. ends up losing him. So Cecil calls the cops on him and he tells them, "Hey, my brother just stole my shit and he pulled a gun on me." Surprisingly enough, he doesn't press charges. I guess Cecil felt like because he had just, gotten out of the joint and, he didn't want to see him go back, that he didn't need to press charges on him. But homie definitely needed his ass whooped. Like, you pull a gun on me, okay, we fighting. If I don't take you out permanently, we fighting. Anywho, so a few months went by and Jesse Jr., he's living his life, following in his father's footsteps, so to speak. He's being an abusive asshole towards his girlfriend, Sheila Jones. So, like father, like son. But the brothers are doing okay, I guess, in their own right. Like, Cecil's got his girl and his family. Um, Jesse, he's got his girlfriend, Sheila Jones. Everybody is pretty much doing their thing. Now, where Cecil lived at 722 Leicester Street, it is in the Binghamton neighborhood of Memphis, Tennessee, and it's kind of like a sketchy area. So, you'll hear anything from fireworks to gunshots, arguments, all kind of stuff. Um, but what I can say is that the owner of the house, Rob Robinson, he said that Cecil was a really good tenant. They had lived there for about 6 months, paid the rent on time, all of that. His neighbors across the street, Wayne Bolden, said that, he was pretty much to himself, didn't really bother anybody, would pop off fireworks, but that was about it. But what was heard on those early morning hours of March 2nd, 2008 was not fireworks. Jesse Jr., their father Jesse Sr., and half brother William Waddell, they go over to Cecil's house so that they can watch the University of Memphis basketball game on TV. And Marissa is there along with 33-year-old Hollis Seals and his 22-year-old girlfriend, Sindri Robertson. And, Cecil's got all the kids over there and everything. The only one that wasn't there in the house was Sierra because she was at her friend's house. It was Sierra's birthday the next day. So Jesse Jr. and his pops and William, they go over there to watch the game. And for whatever reason, they couldn't. So I think Cecil's television didn't get the channel or something. So Jesse Sr. decides that he's going to go ahead and go. And when he leaves, Cecil's still on the porch, cleaning the grill, getting ready to barbecue. Now, at this point, Jesse Jr. and his brothers, they're all still hanging out. But William, he decides that he going to go ahead and leave too. And around 10:30, 11 o'clock that night, he dips out. Jesse Jr. is still there, drinking, carrying on. And of course, as always, with alcohol, you never know what's going to happen. So he asks his brother Cecil to go with him to his girlfriend's house. They go over to Sheila's and she's not there, but her daughter Kiera is. So Kiera opens the door and she can see, both Jesse Jr. and Cecil. They're drunk off their asses. And Junior's like, "Where your mama at? Where my girl at?" You know, belligerent, drunk, stupid, all of that. And Kiera is extremely aggravated. So she just, she tells him the truth. She's not here. But Jesse don't believe her. So he go up in the house and he's going from room to room looking for his woman. And once he sees that she's not there, like Kiera told him, he leaves. They made one more stop though, right before everything went down, and that was to Cecil's baby mama, Erica's house. So Cecil and Jesse Jr. go to Erica's early that morning, like midnight or so. And she lived at an apartment complex off of Campbell Avenue. So when they came over, it was him, Cecil, and Hollis. They talked for a minute, and Cecil was like, "All right, I'm gonna come back in a few." But Erica told him, "Don't worry about it. I ain't gonna be up." So after they left, they go back to Cecil's place. Now, remember, I told you both of them are gang members. So, of course, there's guns lying around the house. Cecil got a 9mm. Jesse Jr. had a 380 caliber. There's a 12 gauge sawed off shotgun that Cecil had in the living room, not to mention the 9mm gun that his girlfriend Marissa had. So Cecil, Jesse Jr., Marissa, Hollis, Sindri, they're all kicking it in the living room. The kids are in 2 out of 3 of the bedrooms in their beds. The boys share a room with bunk beds, and then Sierra had her own room. But since she was out, at her friend's house, CJ was in her room so that he could watch TV. And then Cedric, Samario, and Cecil the second are in their room. Baby Sanaya is in their parents' room, sleeping. She's 2 months old, so it's not like she can just, bounce around or whatever. So everybody's in their rooms, and Jesse Jr. and Cecil, they get into an argument. And it's supposedly over Cecil calling the cops. And Erica, she calls Cecil's phone while this is going on. She called him at like 1:15 that morning and talked to him real brief. And, she's like, okay, what's my baby doing? All of that. And he's like, yo, I'm gonna hit you back. 15 minutes later, she calls him again and he didn't answer. But then she calls back one more time around 2 in the morning. And that's when she hears them arguing. And he's like, yo, I'm gonna call you back. This nigga wildin'. And, she's aggravated. She's asking him, like, where is my child? But he just cuts her off and he was like, yo, I gotta go. And he hangs up the phone. It's storming outside and it's thunder and lightning. And remember, CJ is in his sister's room watching TV when all of a sudden he just hears pow. And he knows the kind of neighborhood that they're in. He knows that it didn't come from outside. So he gets up and he tiptoes quietly down the hall and he peeks around the corner into the living room and he sees Jesse Jr. pointing a gun at his father's head. Now, his father isn't talking, and that's because Cecil is already dead. Jesse Jr. had shot Cecil numerous times. Like, as CJ is coming down the hall, you just hear pop, pop, pop. Everybody is in the living room except for Hollis. Hollis is in the dining room. So he's like literally coming toward it. And Junior turns the gun on Hollis and shot him as well. Then when he was done, he turned the gun to Sindri, who was begging and pleading, like, please don't do this, don't do this. And he pulls the trigger once again, multiple times. Now, when CJ saw this, he ran back to his sister's room and, he's sitting down on her bed and, he can hear Jesse Jr. coming down the hallway and he's scared and he can hear his mother crying. He doesn't know what to do. Like, he was at one point, he was thinking, like, okay, this is a dream. Like, this baby is literally shaking with fear. And then the monster appears. Jesse Jr. comes into the door with a knife in his hand. And CJ's realizing, like, Uncle Junior is about to hurt me. And he tells him, Uncle Junior, please don't do this. I love you. And Junior tells him, no, you don't. He cuts CJ's throat and CJ like grabs his neck to try to stop the bleeding. So Jesse Jr., he thinks that everything's cool. He goes to Cedric and Samario where they are in the other room and they're scared. And he tells Samario, boy, I ain't gonna hurt you. And we all know that's a lie because Junior had this board that he had taken from the kitchen and he used it to beat Samario and pummel him. And CJ takes this opportunity to try to go get the phone so that he can call the police. So Junior sees him and he tells him, if you call the cops, I'm going to kill your parents. But CJ knows that his father is already dead. And CJ asks him, he was like, can I go to the bathroom? And oddly enough, Jesse Jr. let him go to the bathroom. And, CJ's like trying to think on his feet, like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? He has to survive. But then all of a sudden he turns around and Jesse Jr. stabs him. He was aiming for his chest, but CJ put his hands up in kind of like a defensive mode. And somehow Jesse Jr. veered and stabbed CJ in the head so deep that the blade got stuck. And so Junior shoves him in the tub, and CJ decides at that point the best thing to do is just to play dead. And so Jesse Jr. leaves him there thinking, all right, I got him taken care of. And he goes back to where Samario and Cecil the second are, and he stabs Cecil the second and brings him into the bathroom where CJ is. CJ sees his brother's head bleeding and he's woozy. And Cecil the second goes to lay down. Remember, he's only a baby. Like, he's only 2. So Jesse Jr. turns to Cedric and he grabs the knife and he stabs him multiple times and he's pummeling him with the board. And CJ can hear all of this. Now, his mother, Marissa, she's still alive at this point, and she sees what's going on. She's crying, she's begging, she's pleading. It's literally just her and the baby. And Jesse Jr. goes to her and he's yelling, "Give me his car keys. Give me the keys to his car." And Marissa, she's scared. She's like, "Junior, please. I just had a baby. Please don't hurt us." But he's persistent. "Give me the fucking car keys." And Marissa tells him, "I don't know where they are. I think that he had them in his pocket. They probably on him." And Jesse Jr. hears this and he's like, "All right, give me your cell phone." But Marissa doesn't know where they are. And Junior's not trying to hear that. So he gets the gun and he now has her in the living room. And she's praying and begging for him to let her go. "Please, I got a baby. I got think about your niece, think about your nephews." And he tells her, "Sorry, I ain't let your husband or your husband's friends get away with it." Another bang, and Marissa falls to the ground. Okay, now this next part, I apologize, I didn't give the warning before, but you definitely may want to skip ahead by about 15 seconds. So, baby Sanaya is in the house with this monster by herself. She can't fend for herself because she's only 2 months old. She doesn't know that her uncle is about to do something. Like, this man literally just goes from room to room and he's killing everybody. He goes into baby Sanaya's room where she's laying peacefully and he stabs her and he hits her in the head with that board, crushing her skull, making sure that there are no witnesses. And when he's done, it's early morning, like 4 or 5 in the morning, maybe. Not well, not that late, but it's still early. And he goes outside and he takes CJ's bike and he pedals away. And he goes back to his girlfriend Sheila's house and Kiera lets him in. Listen, she better than me because by the time he got back to his girlfriend's house, it's a little after 3 o'clock in the morning. But Kiera let him in and she goes back to her room and closes the door because she got to take care of her own little boy. So she's in her room all but maybe 5 minutes and he comes knocking on the door and he's like, "Yo, let me holler at you real quick." And Kiara's trying to put the baby to sleep. So she's like, "Listen, I'm gonna come holler at you in a minute. Just give me a second. I gotta put the baby to sleep." But she ended up falling asleep too, which was kind of good for her because this nigga is creepy as fuck. And when Sheila finally got home, Junior's pissed off. He's still drunk. "Where the hell you been? Ladies don't come home at 5 o'clock in the morning." Okay, I honestly can't see him saying that because like what? But okay. So she's not thinking anything of it. And she's like, "Yeah, he's just on his normal bullshit." And she goes to sleep. Now, later that morning, they get up and she takes him to his sister Nicole's apartment and she drops him off. Kiera, she wakes up and she goes into the bathroom and she's noticing all these little bleach stains all over the bathroom rug. Okay, so FYI, they had a brown rug in the bathroom, so the bleach spots were definitely noticeable. And she also saw that the bleach bottle wasn't where it typically was. She's not thinking much of it at the time, but it made sense later on. So Jesse Jr. was pretty much at his sister's all day on the second. March 3rd rolls around, and Cecil's coworkers are noticing that he ain't showing up for work. And y'all know, black folks, we don't play about our money. Okay. The minute you don't show up for work, we gonna hit you up and be like, "Yo, what's good? You coming in today?" And that's exactly what happened. His coworkers were calling him. And on top of that, his baby mama Lawanda, she's calling him, trying to figure out where he's at, what's going on. She ain't heard from her daughter. Now, here's the thing. Before the murder, Jesse Jr. had gone over to Cecil's best friend's house. Cecil had a best friend by the name of William Boyd Hill. Now, he was also a member of the Gangster Disciples, which, was the Bloods. And of course, if you recall, I told you that Jr. was a Crip. The night of the murders, Jesse Jr. and Cecil had also gone to William's house and Jesse Jr. asked him for the gun that he gave him to hold before he had gotten locked up. This particular gun fired 380 caliber bullets. And so, William gave it back as well as a P232 CI handgun. And the reason why I'm describing this, I know it sounds weird, but the reason why I'm describing it is because this particular gun could hold up to 8 rounds. It had a 7 round magazine and like a single, bullet in the chamber. So I forgot to add that part, my bad. But on Monday, March 3rd, 2008, Jesse Jr. goes to work with his dad around 8 o'clock that morning, but they ended up stopping at like 11 because of the weather. And Nicole, she's hitting Junior up and she's like, "Hey, I need to go by Cecil's. I can't get in touch with him. Erica blowing up my phone about it." So Jesse Jr., he calls his pops and he was like, "Hey, Nicole want to go by Cecil's house real quick because Erica's been trying to reach him on his phone since like 2 o'clock this morning." Now, Erica had gone by the house the day before. She went by around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the second and she knocked and nobody answered. Naturally. And when she gets there, she notices that the front door is like partially open. The storm door, it's closed and the radio's playing. She didn't hear or see any of the kids. And I guess she just figured that, maybe they were outside and had, run somewhere real quick or something. So she just left it alone. But as the day goes on, she's calling, still can't get a hold of him. And, she calls his best friend at work and she was like, "Yo, something's wrong. I can feel it in my gut. Something is wrong." And Cecil's best friend, he don't necessarily want to go to the cops, but he's like, "All right, do what you got to do." And so she waits a little bit, but then she finally calls and the police and, she tells them everything and she asks them to do a welfare check. And they say, "Okay, we got you." The cops get there and Officer Randall Davis is the first one to get there on the scene. So as soon as he walks in the front door, he is immediately hit with the smell. Now, I don't know if you've ever been around a dead body before, but it has like a copper smell to it. Like if you've ever held like a handful of wet pennies, that's what it smells like to me. So when he walks in, he smells the dead bodies. Now, the storm door is closed and the interior door is still partially open, which is what Erica had confirmed when she went to go look for Cecil. The only difference is that she didn't see the foot that was on the floor, but Officer Davis did. That and the smell was a dead giveaway that something was up. He walks inside, and in front of him, he sees 4 dead bodies. All of them are laying out. He goes from person to person, and you're supposed to check for signs of life, but with the multiple gunshot wounds that he could visibly see, he knew that they were dead. Two of his other partners come in and they start combing the scene. They're going from room to room, searching for bodies or, searching for the perpetrator. And they have an officer at the front door. Officer Davis, he's walking around and he sees blood all over the house. And it's not like fresh, it's dried blood. So he knows, okay, they've been here for a minute. He opens the door to the bathroom and he sees CJ in the bathtub with a knife in his head. And he calls out, "We got another body." And he's getting closer and he sees CJ's eye twitches and he yells out, "Hey, we got a live one, call a bus." They call for an ambulance for CJ and the officer continues to go through the house. Next, he goes to the bedroom on the left side of the hallway and he sees 4-year-old Samario. And Officer Davis is hopeful. He's praying, "God, please let this kid be alive." But sadly, he wasn't. He was deceased. So he goes to another bedroom and he sees 2 more children that are laid out. 2-year-old Cecil Dotson II and 5-year-old Cedric. So he radios in that he found 2 more children deceased, and then he goes to the last bedroom where another officer had found the 2-month-old baby girl Sanaya, who was still alive. So Memphis Fire Department, they get there, and a lot of the fire departments are trained in CPR and everything because they're typically the first on the scene before the ambulance arrives. Now, Daniel Morper, who was an emergency medical technician and a firefighter, was told to check the bodies for signs of life. But he didn't really do that because it was obvious that several of them were dead. And remember, the crime happened in the wee early hours of March 2nd, and it is now the evening of March 3rd. So it's been like 40 hours. The blood had started to dry up. So, when they get to the room with the kids, they see Cecil the second is in fact dead, but Cedric is still alive. So they take him out to the ambulance with his brother and his 2-month-old sister. CJ's got cuts all over his face. He's got a sawzall blade stuck into the top of his head. There's blood everywhere. They're surprised that that baby made it. So, firefighter and paramedic Patrick McDevitt, he comes onto the scene. They rush baby Sanaya, Cedric, and CJ to the hospital. But when Patrick comes in, he's the one that actually goes and looks at the rest of the victims, touching them to make sure that, he checked for a pulse or other vital signs, running ECGs, which means that, they had to take the clothing off, but they all knew that they weren't going to find any signs of life, especially with, some of the kids appearing to be dead and then, everything. So, Lieutenant Deputy Director Tony Armstrong from the Homicide Bureau of the Memphis Police Department, he gets on the scene and he calls Lieutenant Walter Davidson and tells him, "Hey, it's like 6 people murdered on Leicester Street. We got to find out who the fuck did this shit quick. We got to make sure that these kids are safe in case somebody comes back to try to, finish the job. Quarantine them at the hospital. Do not let anybody know who they are." So the tactical unit, they go to the hospital to make sure that, the kids are safe and make sure that the media doesn't try to get to them or anybody else for that matter. And at this time, Jesse Jr. is at the house with Nicole and they head over to Cecil's because, Jesse had asked to be taken over there by Nicole. It's about 6:30 in the evening when they get there, and it's her and Jesse Jr. and their cousin Tammy Randolph. But when they get there, there's a ton of ambulances and fire trucks and police cars, and the house has been taped off. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. And everybody's telling them, like, yo, a bunch of people are dead inside. Some people made it. And Nicole is like, "What? What are y'all talking about?" And so Jesse Jr. sees this and he tells her, "Hey, don't you say anything to the media. Don't talk to nobody. They probably gonna blame me for the murders because of my background." And this throws her a little bit. Like, I would have been like, "Nigga, what?" Immediately, if you would have said, "Don't talk to the media," yeah, you did it. You did it. So word is starting to spread that there was a murder at the house. And so LaWanda Abston, Cecil's first baby mama, she's calling frantic. She's calling Junior, "Where's my baby at? What happened at Cecil's? Where's Sierra? I need to know my daughter is okay." And the cops are combing over the crime scene and everything, trying to figure out what happened. They've got the warrant now so that they can search the house and all of that. And the first thing that they notice is that the living room isn't really that big. Like, it's maybe 10 feet or so. But with 4 adult bodies in the living room, yeah, it's not that big. And the house is dirty, it's cluttered, and the crime scene has been staged, which was really odd. So they start looking at each victim individually. All of the victims had multiple gunshot wounds. All of the adults had been shot in their leg at least once, except for Hollis. The cops also found out that there were 2 different guns used. One was a 9 millimeter and the other was the 380 caliber, but neither of the guns were there. They did find shell casings and spent bullets in the living room on the cushion of the sofa, as well as the wall unit for the air conditioner. And there were some underneath the sofa, inside the arm of the sofa, between 2 of the cushions in the wall. There were some behind the sofa. And then when they happened to move one of the jackets that was on the love seat, they find a Ziploc bag that had several shell casings from both the 9 millimeter and the 380. And so Jesse Jr. removed it from the scene to try to cover his tracks, is what I'm guessing. Now, Cecil's body is in a kneeling position in front of the sofa, and he had a bag of weed in his hand. Cecil had several gunshot wounds with 2 different guns. He had been shot in the front of his body He was shot in the neck, one at the bottom of his foot, several bullets in both of his legs. The cops were able to tell that a pillow had been placed over his face before he was shot point blank range. And they could deduct that Cecil had been facing the attacker because there were so many bullets in his chest. Not to mention, he had one in his right thigh, left leg, and left foot. And it didn't take long to figure out that the bag of weed was placed in his hand after the fact because it was so large that if he was holding it when he got shot, he would have dropped it. It was too big for him to close his fingers around, too. So that was another thing. Sindri was in a seated position on the floor with her back to the sofa. Her legs had been extended and her head was like cocked to the side between the sofa and the love seat. Her pants had been pulled down and her shirt had been pulled up over her head to expose her breasts. And in between her legs was a clear plastic bag that had like 3 to 5 rocks of crack cocaine near her vagina. Her body had been staged as well. The blood trail showed that she had been pulled from the sofa to the floor. And her blood was soaking up the sofa cushion, but there was no blood where she was on the floor. So that's how they knew that it was staged. She had been hit by 4 bullets to the right thigh, left knee, left calf, and left thigh. And so because her pants were down, they had to check for trauma, but the test did conclude that she had not been raped. Cecil's girlfriend, Marissa, her body had been moved as well. She had been shot 5 times. She took one to the head, chest, left leg, right back, and her abdomen. That is fucking overkill. Like, they see that her body is on the floor and she's actually slumped over Sindri's body with like her legs kind of like scissored across hers. The same way that the blood had soaked the cushion, it had done the same for Marissa. Hollis, he had been shot 3 times, one to the mouth and two to the chest, and they see that he was kind of hidden. Hollis's body was across from the front door, and it was like near the door that was kind of like connected to the kitchen and the living room. His pants were also pulled down below his knees, but his body wasn't moved like the others. The investigators also noticed that a lot of the knives were missing from the kitchen, and Officer Davis is like, okay, well, it's probably because that's the shit that was, used towards the kids. And remember, I told y'all the kids not only had stab wounds, but they had been beaten with the wooden board also. The cops found 5 knife blades in the house, including the one that had been lodged in CJ's head. There was blood throughout the house, and they were it was so much in the bathroom that they literally thought CJ was a miracle. So at this point, the cops are like, all right, we got to get this sick motherfucker. They had a mountain of evidence, mountain of photos. Crime scene literally had a field day in that house, from the blood smears to stains, all of that. According to Sergeant Mullins, Jesse Jr. spent considerable time in the house to stage that crime scene, like about an hour. That's how long it took to stage that crime scene. So they're sending the detectives and sergeants from the Safe Streets Task Force and the Organized Crime Unit to go outside and talk to the neighbors and, their family members and all of that. And Marissa's mom, Ida Williams, she done pulled up and they asked her, well, do you know anybody that would want to do this to your daughter or to Cecil? And Miss Williams, she tells the police about Erica and how she and Marissa didn't get along because apparently he did fuck around on Marissa with Erica and had a baby for her. And the two of them were always getting into it. Remember, on Valentine's Day, Erica and Cecil got into it after they went out. So Lieutenant Armstrong, he tells Sergeant James and Sergeant Joe to go, holler at Jesse Jr. and have him come to the station. Jesse goes to the police station March 4th, 2008. He wasn't under arrest yet. In fact, he was actually at the safe house with his niece Sierra. Yep. They put this fool in protective custody. But, they go get him and bring him to the station to ask him some questions because he was one of the last people seen with Cecil. He says that March 1st, he and William and his father go over there to watch the game, but they couldn't. And his pops left, and how they stayed at the crib for a little bit, and Hollis came through. He talks about how they left and drove to William Boyd's crib. And when they got there, Cecil and Jesse Jr. had sat outside while their friend went in. He says that they then left to pick up his girlfriend at Kimball Cabana Apartments to buy some weed. And at this point, it's like 11:30, maybe midnight. Cecil went inside and bought some weed and ran into Erica in the parking lot, and they kind of, talked for a little bit. Then they went to his house off of Lamar Avenue, where Cecil talked to another woman for like 30 minutes before they made their way to their grandmother's house to pick up Junior's son. Supposedly, Jesse Jr.'s son wasn't there, so they talked with their grandmother there for a little while, and he gave her some money and then went to Sheila's house. This is a lot of driving and visiting, but okay. Anyway, so he says that they go to Sheila's house, but she wasn't there, and Jesse Jr. did the stepdad thing and fussed at Sheila's daughter Kiera for being alone in the house with her boyfriend, and then he went to bed. He says Sheila got home at like 5 and he went to work. So he's trying to make it seem like, he had an alibi. And it sounds okay, but again, we're dealing with the police. So they asked Jesse Jr., "Did your brother have any enemies?" This was all he needed to hear. So this is how the whole story of it was the gang members that were responsible came about. Okay, check this out, y'all. Cecil and his best friend William had gone out to a club on Valentine's Day. They went out with, his baby mama Erica and William's girlfriend. Yeah, now, okay, I got questions on that back end because you got a whole girlfriend who got four of your kids, one of whom is a newborn, and you out here doing dirt. Okay. Now, after the club, they went back to William's girlfriend's house, and Cecil and Erica, they started going at it in the parking lot. They cussing each other, yelling at each other, fuck you, no fuck you, all of that. Erica comes running up the stairs into William's girlfriend's house, and Cecil's right behind her, beating on the doors, cussing her out. Bitch, open the motherfucking door, and blah, 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 blah. And so William's wondering what's going on. Cecil's mad, and he's like, you know what? I'm calling the cops. And he makes good on his promise, and the cops get there. And Cecil supposedly tells them it's because his girl got weed in the house. And William gets mad because he's like, yo, what the fuck you doing calling the cops? You know, we don't do that. We don't call the cops on each other, which is true because we don't. William tells his boy Cato about what happened, and then Cato goes and tells another gang member by the name of Doc Holliday, which is like the gangster disciples leader over their area. They all get together with a few others and they decide they're going to write Cecil up, which basically means punishment. And according to the gangster disciples, a write up can be punishments like punches to the chest, the lip, pumpkin head, 3 minutes to a death violation. And here's a little fact though. With a death violation, whenever it gets ordered, it means that it's only for the individual gang member and not for everybody associated with them. But William said that there was never a death violation or a write up for Cecil. And remember, this is Cecil's best friend. He's going to know more than anybody. He was like, yo, if we wanted to kill Cecil, we could have easily got home, got him by himself. We wouldn't have to wait until 2 o'clock in the morning when he was at home. What the fuck we look like killing his girl and his kids and they ain't have nothing to do with it. And he goes on to say, trust me, if the gangster disciples wanted to kill him, they would have been armed and they wouldn't have, run out of bullets. So the story that was told was that Cato was the one that approached Cecil about what he did, and supposedly Cecil basically told him fuck off. And apparently that's when Cato was like, that's why Doc fucked your baby moms. Why do men feel the need to throw around if they fucked another nigga's girl? Like that irritates me so much. But the most damning evidence was what William told the investigators. He flat out said, "We all gang members, but we ain't been active in the gang in a while. We didn't go to meet the meetings or nothing like that, but we still repped our hood." Um, on a side note, gangs have meetings? Like, not trying to be funny, but like, wow, like niggas is really organized in these streets. Like, okay. That's sorry, I'm being goofy. But, Jesse Jr. goes on to tell them that, "Oh, my brother got a 45, but I ain't see it with him when I was with him. I know he got an AK-47. He got a couple of magazines under the dresser and his crib, and, he got a sawed-off shotgun, and his girl got a 9 millimeter." And so the cops get all this information and they decide, all right, you know what? It's time to speak with the gangster disciples. And this is where I start to think,
No, you done fucked up, right? No, 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 no. You know you done fucked up, right?
why would you make up this big lie about the gangster disciples? Like, you put an entire massacre on your brothers, like on his gang. Are you trying to die? But it's too late because the cops decide to follow up on what Jesse Jr. told them. So Sergeant Max speaks with this guy named Cedric Atkins, and Cedric tells Sergeant Max that he had heard that, Cecil had stolen like $300,000 from a drug dealer. But then he talks to a confidential informant that said it was only like 50,000 in drug money from Doc. And when the gang members found out that they were the ones that were being looked at for the murder, oh, they were pissed off because how the fuck we get in it? Like, what the fuck we look like killing innocent women and kids? That's not, that's not what we do. If we gonna off you, we gonna off you. And they decide to send a little message. Jesse Jr. and Sierra were in protective custody, but Nicole is still at her apartment with her kids. So they paid Nicole a visit. Thank God she wasn't at home. But when she gets home, she sees the front door has been kicked in. And so their mom, Priscilla, was like, "Oh no, I rebuke that." She tells Nicole, "Pack up you and the kids' stuff. We out of here." And they go and they move in with Nicole's cousin, Sharonda Lane, who lived off of Gale Street. That didn't mean shit to the disciples though, because they name ain't been cleared. So while Nicole and her kids are living with her cousin Sharonda, Nicole is getting calls on her cell phone from her own house phone, y'all. Yes, somebody is calling her on her cell phone from inside her apartment. Now, remember, this is early 2000s, so they still had house phones back then. I don't know if you still have a house phone, if anybody listening does, but yeah, they are non-existent at this point. And there was one occasion that they called that Jesse Jr. answered the phone and he's like, "Yo, I know who you are. Y'all need to chill out." And so Nicole calls the cops, and then all of a sudden, Junior starts freaking out. And I'm like, "Boy, how the fuck did you expect her to act when she's getting calls on her cell phone from her own house? Like, you the one that put this thought into everybody's head that the gangster disciples was behind this mess. You set that wheel in motion." So now he's spazzing out and he all suicidal. And so Sharonda calls the cops because they don't know what the hell is going on with this dude. He's crying, "I'm not going to jail. Y'all might as well just bury me with my brother." He grabs his half brother William's gun and points it at his own head. Ain't that some crazy shit? So Sharonda, she goes outside and she tells the cops, like, "Hey, Junior is threatening to commit suicide if y'all come up in here. Y'all can't come in the crib. Jesse gonna kill himself. I can't have that." So they back off and they call Junior on his cell phone. And they talk for a few minutes. And eventually, Jesse Jr. calms down enough to where he allows the cops to come in. And when they get inside the house, he's still spazzing and he's telling them, "Everybody thinks I did it. I've been all on the news and the police saying I did it." Probably because you did. So Officer Stepney, he's one of the officers to respond. And, he tries to reason with him and he takes the gun because he's like, "Yo, this dude is acting like real skittish, not to mention, you ain't supposed to have no weapons, no way." And they're telling him, "Jesse, we're not trying to arrest you. We're trying to put you in protective custody. Your sister's door has been kicked in. The place where you've been laying your head is now dangerous. So we got to make sure y'all are safe." Dr. Michael Maurer, who is an expert in the fields of adult and pediatric neurosurgery, he ended up performing surgery on all three children on March 3rd. He said that when CJ got to the hospital, he was moaning, but he was wide awake and was able to follow instructions. He had trauma and swelling to his forehead because of the part of the steak knife that had been sticking out. He had a 7-inch laceration in his scalp that went all the way down his forehead. His skull was severely fractured, and pieces of his skull had been driven inward with like a blunt force object, which, of course, we later find out is that wooden board. He had two separate wounds on the back of his arm and chest. And remember, he was in defense mode when his uncle came at him. He had a superficial laceration across his neck, a laceration on his right hand, and a laceration on his left thumb. Cedric had extensive facial trauma and was essentially semi comatose when he got to the hospital. He had injuries consistent with being beaten with the board as well, multiple fractures to his face, mid face, and lower portion of his skull. He had a fractured nose, which had been pushed inward. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it, but it looked like it had been shoved in, and a small skull fracture with bruising on the back of his brain. He had stab wounds to the eye, his forehead, and his neck. Baby Sanaya had a large cut in her skull that exposed her bone. It was so deep. The right side of her skull had been pushed in with a blunt object that resulted in an open, depressed skull fracture. They had to do a CT scan, and it showed that her brain was probably cut or at the very least bruised. Jessie had taken the wooden board and beat her almost to death. Then she had stab wounds to her lower left extremity. So, basically, none of these kids would have survived had they not been found when they were. And at this point, the cops know now that, CJ is the key witness. They need to talk to him to see if he's coherent enough to tell them, if he knows anything. And so Lieutenant Caroline Mason of the Homicide Bureau goes to the hospital and she tries to interview CJ, but he's in and out of consciousness. And when he is conscious, he's cursing, screaming out names, talking crazy. He kept saying Cassandra and Roderick. And so they did a little bit of digging and they learned that his mother, Marissa, had a sister named Cassandra. They did some, more looking into it and they realized, okay, they didn't have anything to do with it. It's cool. So on March 7th, 2008, the officers get a phone call from the nurse at the hospital, and she tells them, "Hey, CJ's awake. He's calmer. So y'all can, try to talk to him now." And the Child Advocacy Center came in with Lieutenant Mason and they talk with CJ and they do a recorded interview. They're asking him, "CJ, who did this to you? Do you remember what happened?" And CJ tells them that his Uncle Junior was the person that was responsible for killing his parents and their friends and for stabbing and attacking him and his brothers and sister. Lieutenant Mason hears this and she is floored. So she calls Deputy Armstrong and she tells him, "Hey, we know who did it. CJ said Jessie Dotson Jr. did it." And Deputy Armstrong is thinking, "What the fuck?" So he's like, "All right, don't tell anybody what you've heard until I get a chance to listen to the tape." So later he gets the tape and he starts listening to it. And all he's thinking is, "We got this dude at the safe house with his niece and the rest of his family. We got to get him the hell out of there." So they have him transferred from the safe house to the Homicide Bureau and they assign Sergeant Mason and Sergeant Max to interview him. Jesse Dotson Jr. is officially arrested. He gets advised of his rights. He signs a written waiver and agrees to talk to the cops. Lieutenant Mason, he approaches him and he says, "We just want to clear some things up and, find out if you got any information to add as to what you told us in your March 4th interview." And they then ask him, "Do you have any affiliation with a gang?" And Junior's like, "Yeah, I'm a Crip." When I was in prison, I joined the kitchen crips. And so she asks him, okay, well, what's your relationship like with your brother? And Jesse Jr., he plays it cool. He's like, some real shit. We got our issues just like any family. He called the cops on me once and lied and said that I robbed him. And the lieutenant is listening to all of his answers, like, okay. All right, tell me again what happened on March 1st and what you were doing last time you saw your brother alive. And Junior kept the same story for the most part, but only like a few things were a little different from the first time. He says that he had gone to his crib so that he could get his gun, and Cecil had told one of his people that Jesse was his bitch ass brother who had just gotten out of prison. And Jesse's frowning as he's recalling all of this. But then he says that he did not go back with Cecil to his crib. And I guess he realized that he fucked up because all of a sudden he clams up and he stops talking, which is pretty much too late because they're already getting what they need. So Deputy Armstrong, he's been watching the interview and he comes in and he decides to finish it himself. He's paying attention to everything. He's reading Jesse Jr.'s body language, he's giving 1 and 2 word answers to all the questions, and he just wouldn't try to, engage or have any type of conversation with them. Anytime Deputy Armstrong would ask him a question, Jesse would nod his head or just, shake his head, but everyone could see he's trying to make sure that he doesn't engage. He's struggling to maintain his composure. At times, he would like lean forward like he wanted to say something, but then like he would just kind of like fall back. At one point, he did something really weird, and Jesse like grabs Deputy Armstrong's hands, and he's holding his hands, and the deputy is pushing him. He can see that Jesse is carrying something, and he's telling him, "Just let it go, let it out, just get off whatever you need to care, whatever you got on you, let it go, let it out, get off whatever you need to say." And for a second, he thinks Jesse's gonna say something, but he just sits there. And so Deputy Armstrong is like, you know what? I'm sick of this shit. He gets down to the nitty gritty and he says, Jesse, what does your family call you? And Jesse Jr. tells him, they call me Junior. And the deputy nods and he says, okay. Is anybody else in the family called Junior? And Jesse tells him, nah, nobody else looks like me. Nobody else really, has confused me with anybody. And so the deputy, he's taking notes. He says, so your family, they pretty much call you Junior. So if one of them comes in here now, they're not going to say, hey, Jesse. They're going to say, hey, Junior. And Jesse nods his head. And the deputy is thinking, got you, bitch. So he pulls out his tape recorder and he starts playing the tape of CJ stating that, he had been stabbed by his uncle Junior. Jesse just starts to get so upset. Like his whole face changes and it looks like he just about to break down and cry. And he says, the gangster disciples, they put a hit on Cecil and his family. We were all in the house and they came in and I hid under the bed and I heard everything. Nigga, what? And the deputy is looking at him like, is this nigga serious? So he asked Jesse, so you hid under the bed while your family pleaded and begged for their lives. You heard your nephews and your niece being killed, and you didn't think to get help or try to help them. And Jesse nods his head yes, and the deputy is telling him like, I don't believe you, right? Like Jesse, your nephew ID'd you. So be real, what happened? So Jesse takes a deep breath and he says, okay, this is what happened for real. Cecil went to go get a gun from his boy and we started arguing. And the whole time that we were driving back to Cecil's house, we argued. When we got back, shit kind of escalated. And when Cecil reached for his shotgun, I just started shooting. I used his gun and his girlfriend's gun. I tried to get rid of the kids because they saw everything and I couldn't shoot them. So I just went into the kitchen and I got some knives because I didn't want to shoot them. Like stabbing them was so much better, but okay. And, Jesse Jr., he's breaking down. He just keeps saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He came at me. So I shot and killed him. And I killed his girlfriend. I killed those people. Those people? Nigga, that's your family. So Deputy Armstrong is looking at Jesse, who now looks like he's just got, the weight of the world off of his shoulders. And he tries to ask him some more questions, but then Jesse says those four magic words: I want a lawyer. And as soon as somebody say that, gotta stop the questioning. But Jesse Jr. does say one more thing though. He says, "Hey, can I talk to my mom?" And the deputy figures, why not? This might help. So they get Priscilla from the safe house and they tell her, "Hey, we've got Jesse in custody and he wants to talk to you." They drive to the police station and it's early morning hours on March 8th. And she sits down and they leave her alone with Jesse. And she takes her son's hand and she asks him, "Baby, what happened? Are they trying to put this on you?" And Jesse looks at his mom and he waits a few seconds and he says, "I did it." And Priscilla looks at him confused and she was like, "What? Why? Why did you do this? Why the babies?" And he just simply says, "They saw me. They saw me do it. We had been beefing all day, and Cecil went to get his gun." And his mama is damn near shaking. She asks him, "Did he point it at you or something?" And Jesse Jr. shakes his head no, and he tells her he never pointed at me. He was just yelling and swinging it around. He put it down, and I just started shooting. I took CJ's bicycle after, everything that I did, and I left. And she's crying, and, she tells him, "But the baby, though, why?" And that's what I want to know. Like, what was the reason that you had for doing this? What was the reason? Seriously.
Reason.
What was the reason?
I had a reason.
What was the reason?
I had a reason.
What was the reason?
I just explained the reason.
What was the reason, bitch?
I don't need to explain myself to you. And
What was the reason?
Those kids were innocent. And I can't move past that. Like, they had nothing to do with it. So Jesse Jr., he's sitting there and shaking his head and he didn't have anything else to say. So Priscilla, she looks at her son and she just tells him, "Son, I love you." And with that, she left. And the deputy comes back in and Jesse says, "I committed the crimes. I killed six people." And on Saturday, March 8th, 2008, 33-year-old Jessie Dotson Jr. was charged with 6 counts of first degree murder and 3 counts of attempted first degree murder. District Attorney Bill Gibbons immediately said that they were going to seek the death penalty for the heinous crimes that he had committed. Now, even though Jesse Jr. confessed to being the only one, the investigation had to, be completed, and the victims, his surviving nephews and niece, and his sister and her kids, and his mother, they stayed in protective custody for a while. And when the department was asked if they were certain that Jesse had, acted alone, especially because of the gangs being involved, the officers, they let it be known that they were very confident and everything, and they completed their investigation. Jesse Jr. was held without bond in jail, and on September 28th, 2010, his murder trial began. Judge James Beasley Jr. Presided over the case. The prosecutors, they're describing it as one of the worst mass killings in Memphis history. He was given defense attorneys Kathleen Morris and Brett McAfee, and they argued that it wasn't enough evidence to convict him and that Cecil had gang ties that could have played a role in the killings. Now, y'all do remember that this nigga confessed, right? But now he's going back and saying that the gangster disciples are responsible for it. Like, damn the fact that you tried to blame it on them the first time and they sent a message by busting down your sister's door to get to her, but now you're putting it back on them. Okay. See how that ends up for you. So the jury, they had to come from Nashville because so many people in Memphis knew about the case and had such strong beliefs on it. The prosecution argued that Jesse Jr. shot his brother over an argument and then attacked the rest of the people in the house to eliminate witnesses, how he ran away on a kid's bike. Oddly enough, though, there was no DNA connecting Jesse Jr. to the scene. There were several unidentified fingerprints and hair from an unknown Asian person. And Clearly, the victims are all black. I'm thinking that the Asian hair thing came about because maybe the women, we wear weave. So maybe that's what it was. I'm just saying. The case was getting national coverage. It was so popular. And in addition to the national media coverage, it was featured on A&E's reality crime television show, First 48. Shout out to First 48. Love them. Um, so the trial lasted a few weeks, and during the trial, they're bringing up several key witnesses. They bring up Cecil's best friend and his girlfriend, who testified that Cecil and Jesse Jr. did, in fact, come to her house the night before to get the gun. Erica also testifies that she had, that he had never been a gang member, and that, she did see him on Valentine's Day and how they had their falling out. Charity Wright, she was an employee at Cricket Wireless, and she testified about Cecil's phone records to confirm what Erica had stated as to, her contacting him. And so Jesse and Cecil's sister, Nicole, she gets on the stand and she testifies about how she feared Jesse and how she felt like she had no choice but to let him come live with her and everything when he got out. She's telling him every day that Jesse lived with me was hell. He was constantly telling us how he hated us for not coming to see him while he was in jail. He felt like we could have done a better job. I wanted him to leave, but I was too afraid to ask him to. Their father, Jesse Sr., testified that he thought the killings were gang related because Cecil had told him that he was attempting to leave the gangster disciples and he was worried that they may try to harm him. And Cecil had gone as far as asking his dad to move in with him because, they respected the family value and they're, unlikely to hurt him if his father were living with him. And Jesse Sr. actually did move in for like a month, but he said he moved out because he was told trying to interfere actually would cause him more harm than good. And then their father testified that Cecil and his brother had a normal relationship. And I'm like, what kind of normal relationship were you looking at? Because since they were kids, these two have been at each other's necks. Like it was bad, y'all. And then listening to the children and their testimonies, two of the jurors were wiping tears from their eyes as they saw the photos of the kids who had been beaten and stabbed to death. And then Jesse Jr.'s cocky ass gets on the stand, this gremlin looking motherfucker, and he's telling the jury everything that happened in that interview, that it was all of a sudden it was coerced. The prosecution is telling him like, "But you confessed." And Jesse's telling him, "Watch the entire tape. Watch the whole thing. You'll see that I was threatened." And the prosecution is like, "Hold up. You in a gang, right?" He's like, "Yep." "You a Crip, right?" "Yep." "So a cop banging on the table scared you, but you a Crip?" That's what he was talking about. The cop supposedly banged on the table and it just had him so scared. But it was the testimony of CJ that really like sealed the deal. CJ got on the stand and he's 11 years old now at the time that he spoke to, what happened. He gave firsthand account as to how he heard the shots and how he thought it was a bad dream, how he tried to go call the police and tried to fight off his uncle before he ended up in the bathtub with the kitchen knife embedded in his hand. And after nearly 2 weeks of witness testimony and evidence presented, both parties rest. It took the jury less than 90 minutes to reach their decision. And on October 12th, 2010, Jessie Dotson Jr. was found guilty of 6 charges of murder. Y'all want to know the really sick shit? As the prosecutor is talking and pleading with the jury to give him the death penalty, Jesse starts clapping his hands in applause, like mocking him. So the prosecution is like, he's a convicted killer out of prison, just 5 months, and he killed 6 people, including 2 children. If not this case, what case? If not that defendant, what defendant gets the death penalty? The children were chased down and carved up with kitchen knives. You know those 2 women were begging for their lives, and now Jesse's begging for his. And this fool is sitting there applauding this. So they take him out of the courtroom and, he's dressed in like streetwear because homie don't even have a suit, just slacks and a dress shirt. And when they bring him back in, he's back in his inmate attire and he's showing all these tattoos and all of that, trying to be all, I guess you could say, trying to look like, he's scary. And the jury came back and they gave Jesse 6 life sentences, one for each murder. His lead defense attorney, Gerald Scott Hands, said that he was just disappointed, but that he wasn't surprised. And when the jury came back with the quick guilty verdict, oh, he knew that the death penalty was definitely going to happen. So the judge gets up to speak and he says, "May God have mercy on your soul." Execution date set for March 2nd, 2012 by lethal injection, which is, 4 years from the day that he shot and killed and stabbed everybody to death. The prosecution, Reginald Henderson and Damon Griffin, they're talking about his demeanor and they said, "I think we see the real Jesse on Saturday. You saw some anger and some rage. That was the real Jesse. He couldn't hold it in." Now, here's some irony though. The jury felt like 6 life sentences wasn't enough, which is crazy. They were like, we're going to sentence you to death. You're going to have 6 life sentences. But you know what? That's not enough. On top of that, almost a month later, on November 8th, he received an additional 120 years in prison, 40 years for each of the attempted murders of the children. That was the maximum sentence for attempted first degree murder, by the way. So Judge Beasley says, "In my 40 years of being in the criminal justice system in Shelby County, I've seen a lot of cases, and I don't know of anything more legally aggravating than this. I guess we're used to seeing adults as victims, but it is uncommon for us to see children get killed, to see children mangled and butchered like this. In my opinion, Mr. Dotson should never be allowed to walk the streets of society again. He's given up that right." Well, shit, with 120 years on top of 6 death sentences, he won't ever walk the streets again. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. So the children were left to be raised by their grandmother, Ida Anderson, which is Marissa's mom. And, she says that the children were devastated. And she's like, "Listen, this is something that has wrecked them completely. The children have been in counseling. The whole family has been in counseling. The grandchildren, they want to know why it happened, why he killed their parents. The children love their Uncle Jesse. All I can tell them is that God is in control and that he will take care of us." The First Baptist Church established a special needs fund for the kids and placed it in a trust and probate court. They raised about $139,000, and due to the stressors, they ended up setting up a Dotson's Children's Benefit Fund to help in assisting with taking care of them. They had to go through a lot of surgeries and everything and emotional trauma, so it's definitely, understandable. And Jesse is still in prison to this day. He was supposed to be executed March 2nd, 2012, but he filed multiple appeals. In 2013, he filed an appeal, and his attorneys argued 5 main points. One, the admission of the defendant's custodial statements does not constitute playing error, which basically means they just have the opportunity to correct it. Their second argument was that his right to counsel did not deprive the defendant of a fair trial or violate his right to due process, which means basically he didn't like the attorneys that he had. Their argument was admission of testimony about a surviving victim statements to third parties and how it did not violate the defendant's state and federal constitutional rights to confront the witness against him. He's saying that he did not get the opportunity to confront any of the witnesses, but in all actuality, he did. And then lastly, the admission of the pathologist's testimony about autopsies was different from another pathologist's performance. And he's saying that it didn't violate the defendant's, federal and state constitutional rights to confront the witnesses against him. So he's arguing that, basically 2 different pathologists came up with 2 different things. Naturally, the appeals court, they're looking at all of this like they do with appeals, and they say, "Nope, we're going to uphold it." And it was decided September 30th, 2014. Jesse's most recent appeal was filed in 2023, and he filed for post conviction relief on the grounds of ineffective assistance of the counsel. He also requested that funds for witnesses to assist in, proving his claims of any effective assistance of the counsel. He's got a new attorney, Andrew Harris, and he states that his life is at stake in this proceeding. It's the fact that the Tennessee Office of the Post Conviction Defender filed a motion in the first place to get money to pay for an expert. Like, nigga, you really think they trying to waste the state's money on you? Phew. Mind you, they had already given him $25,000, which is, I believe, over the cap, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to go back and look at that. But after reviewing the appeal, the Tennessee Supreme Court once again denied his request and was like, nah, you going to stay your black ass right where you at. Jesse is currently being housed at the Riverbend Security Institution in Nashville, Tennessee. His execution has not been carried out as of yet. He's still on death row. The governor of Tennessee actually halted all executions in 2022 and said that they were going to stay halted until they figure out like some issues with the execution protocol. And y'all know the US has had a number of botched lethal injections. So between a bunch of appeals and pretty much luck, his ass is still breathing. Unless homie decides that he wants the electric chair, I don't really see him doing that. But as to the surviving victims, CJ, Cedric, and Sanaya, they've all gotten older and, they're thriving in their own rights. CJ, he is now in his late 20s and he's been at every appeal. He's spoken about his uncle. His uncle tried to say that he wasn't a reliable witness because he had ADHD and was taking mind altering drugs. But CJ remembers very well. His older sister Sierra, she doesn't even want to think about it. Like she told the press, "My brother said what he said. He was there. So what is there more to say? Kill him. Get him off this earth. He's a monster." I know that's right, baby. I've seen a few of the videos that CJ has done as far as like interviews, and bless his heart, like he's still very much struggling emotionally. Like he's still trying to figure out how to deal with things. I know he has a son of his own. One of the interviews that I watched recently of him, like he kind of was like laughing as he described what happened, but I think he was using that as a mechanism to, cope, because some people were just like, okay, well, what's funny? This isn't a funny thing. But I think for him, that's how he, coped with things. That's how he dealt with it. Like you could tell that it was still bothering him, and he had somebody that was there sitting with him in the video in the interview. So, I definitely appreciated the fact that they were there. Like I didn't hear them say anything, but just them sitting there, I could see how, calm he was. Oh, Jessie Dotson Jr. is now engaged to be married. I'm not sure if he's married yet, but he met a woman through letters in 2010. And she's keeping her identity a secret because she's been harassed, which should be a hint and a half that, duh, this nigga's guilty. But she actually thinks he's innocent. They started writing each other and dated a few years and got engaged. And they were supposed to be married in August of 2014, but I couldn't find anything on it. I'm wondering how that's going to work because homie got 6 life sentences plus 120 years. Like your soul is going to be in prison. Like his mother, Priscilla, she says she wonders what the hell is wrong with this woman. And I'm just like, newsflash. If his own mother is questioning your mental capacity, then you probably should just, I don't know, back the fuck up and stay away from him. So, yeah, that's the story of the Leicester Street Massacre. And now it is time for Fair or Foul, where we look at the sentencing from the justice system to determine if it is a fair sentence or a foul one. On this one, I think the sentencing itself was fair. 6 life sentences plus 120 years is definitely fair because, I mean, let's keep it real. He did something extremely heinous. He had no real reason. His own family felt like he had been plotting this from the minute that he was in prison. He had resentment for his family, not coming to see him. What, his mother came once to see him in the 13 and a half years that he was in prison, and he had maybe a handful of phone calls. And he was so quick to blame everybody else, but he still couldn't take accountability for his part in things. He couldn't own up to what he did. And instead of trying to have a better relationship with his relatives and with his siblings, he made them feel scared. He didn't make them feel safe. His own sister didn't feel safe in her house. She wanted her brother to leave, but she was scared to ask him. And his brother and his entire family lost their lives over nothing. He admitted that his brother wasn't even aiming a gun at him. So yeah, I do believe that he was plotting to do what he did. I do believe that he was probably planning to take Cecil out while he was on lockdown. So the sentence is fair. But what I will say is that the actual process of how things are going is foul as fuck. Like, I get it that he has the right to appeal because a lot of people appeal immediately after sentencing, but homie should have been executed a long time ago. Like, this is one of those where I'm like, bring back the firing squad because he damn sure needs it. His last appeal was denied in 2014. They could have scheduled an execution since then. I don't know why it wasn't. I understand that there's, some boxed executions in the US because for some reason when it comes to that little $43 cocktail being done incorrectly, it takes weeks and months and all of that to happen. So that part I will say is foul. I also think that Jesse doing all of these appeals and trying to question his nephew's credibility and his nephew's state of mind is bogus as fuck. CJ having ADHD has nothing to do with him witnessing him kill his entire family. Facts are facts. You are literally a monster. You are a walking, breathing monster. And at the end of the day, you are where you need to be. You killed innocent people and then turned around and you killed one innocent person, did time, and then turned around and killed your whole damn family. So the fact that you could sit there and laugh and clapping and applauding at your trial, the fact that you can have such a smart ass response to the prosecution, it shows exactly who you are, and it shows that you are exactly where you need to be, you sick, twisted fuck. But at least now your family can be free of you. At least now your family can live their lives knowing that you're going to spend the rest of your life behind prison bars. And I hope they never come to visit. I hope that there are no phone calls because why? You don't deserve it. Your own mother has said out of her mouth that she doesn't understand what the hell is wrong with your so called wife and why she'd want to marry you. And honestly, why in the hell do you want your mama to come visit you? Because you didn't show her respect when you was on the outside, when you was threatening to kill her, when you was putting your finger all in her face, and you think she want to? No, absolutely not. If one of my kids get locked up, God forbid, and I am not speaking that shit into existence. But if you sit up here putting your finger in my face and threatening me and shit all the time, and you on the outside, what the fuck am I gonna come visit you for? Absolutely not. Why someone would want to marry somebody that will never be able to see the light of day outside of those walls is beyond me. There isn't going to be some program or an organization to come and free this man. No way in hell is somebody going to come say, "Oh, freedom for Jessie Dotson Jr." And if they do, they some damn fools. Like, no, lock his ass up, throw away the key, fry his ass. And that's just all I got to say about that. That is all for this week's episode of the Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. You can follow the show on the various streams on Instagram and TikTok at Infamous One Podcast. And that's a number one, by the way, not spelled out. And you can leave a review there. I emphasize leave a review. On Twitter, X, it's Infamous One Pod, where you can also leave a review. On Facebook, you can send a friend request to the page, The Infamous Ones, or you can join the private discussion group, The Infamous Ones Discussion Group. But please be advised, if you don't answer the questions, I am not letting your ass in. All honesty, I'm thinking about disbanding the group anyway, because nobody's really active in there like that. I'm going to keep it open for a little bit longer because remember, we have our first live episode August 31st in the Facebook Facebook discussion group. So if you are not already in the discussion group, the Infamous Ones discussion group, join it because August 31st at 7 p.m. it's going down. The show streams on multiple streaming services like Odyssey, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and so on and so on. So leave a review. Y'all, it only takes a few seconds. From last week's episode or from the last episode to this one, we've gotten one review. So come on, I need y'all to get these reviews, okay? Oh, speaking of reviews, this one comes from Spotify from Cookie, Adrian Cookie Sims. And it says, I love this podcast. I binged listened to it and I was mad I caught up. I love how you keep it real and tell the stories in an entertaining way so people can listen. Thank you so much for sharing these stories with us. Oh, thank you, Cookie Girl. I appreciate it, Mama. I'm going to keep it going as long as I can. And, as long as these reviews keep coming in, because that's the important part. So please tell your people, leave a review. The next review is from Instagram, which is crazy. Because I don't think I've ever had anybody leave a review there, but it comes from Dark Chalk 73. It says, finally figured out how to leave a review for the podcast, which I absolutely love. The storytelling is top tier, very detailed, and I love that you do your research. I enjoy listening to different spins on certain crimes, and this podcast always has a few more details. You go the extra mile to not leave us hanging. Keep up the good work. Now, that I definitely appreciate. I just ask that y'all please, of course, leave reviews because the show really does need them. I need these freaking reviews. Y'all gotta help me out, okay? Again, don't forget, August 31st, there will be an episode via Facebook Live in the Infamous Ones group. Join the group and get ready for a live episode. We're gonna have popcorn on deck. We're gonna have drinks on deck. All of that good stuff. If you want to support the show or if you're feeling the spirit, meaning that liquor that we've been sipping on, and a shout out to my drink of choice tonight, Red Turtle Vodka. But to support the show, click the link at the bottom of the screen from whatever app you're listening to this episode on and hit listener support to subscribe or donate. Oh, and you can also donate via the Cash App at $infamous one pod. That's $INFAMOUSONEPOD. Donations go toward new recording equipment because these microphones are so irritating. Oh, and shout out to the popcorn donation and shout out to the donator of the week, Miss Nicole Lightfoot. Thank you, boo. If you have a case you want to hear more on that you feel has been ignored in the Black community, if you want to inquire about ad space, or if you want to leave a review, emphasis on that last part, send an email to infamous1pod@gmail.com. That's INFAMOUSONEPOD@gmail.com. And once again, people, please share, share, share. As the Care Bears say, sharing is caring. I think they say that anyway. I don't know. Anyway, this podcast is growing by the day, and sharing makes a world of difference, I promise. Until then, y'all know what it is. I'm your girl, Kay. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see y'all next time with a new episode. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay. Be sure to like and comment on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.